And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Talk podcast. Right back alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Dan, Tuesday evening, back on Tuesdays. How's it going, my man?
It is going well. It was a hot one down here in Georgia today. Had an opportunity to soak in some of those rays, and a hot day for a hot show. I'm hoping that we have a great show, and I hope you guys agree.
Action-packed one that again. I had to trim a segment we wanted to do this week, and add it to next week's show. So we got a lot coming. And Dan, let's go ahead and get right into it. We had a little breaking news. I guess it was late last night. I think it was around 9:30 last night, depending on when your bedtime is for everybody. We had another addition to the 2022, a stacked 2022 Georgia recruiting class, a reclassification, and a legacy that is coming to Georgia this fall. Marcus Washington Jr. reclassifies into the 2022 recruiting class. Obviously, that recruiting class has been signed and sealed since February. At least all of them have been signed and sealed since February. Most of them came in December and signed and sealed. So now, a four-star cornerback out of Grovetown, Georgia, joins the likes of Jaheim Singletary, Julian Humphrey, and Dalen Everett. Absolutely it is a stat class at DB already, and we're already adding on to it with another four-star DB. Yes, this is the son of Marcus Washington Sr., who played under Mark Richt from at Georgia from 2005 to 2009. Guys, he fits the mold of exactly everything Georgia wants in its corner these days under Coach Smart, whether it was when Mel Tucker was here coaching DBs, or Charlton Warren, or last year Jamel Adai, and now Fran Brown. There's nothing changing about this position. Dan, I want to get your take on just, what this means for the class, and what is your outlook on Marcus Washington Jr. and the defensive back room as a whole now?
Well, I think you started off the part of it saying this was an absolutely stacked class that was already coming in. When I saw the news and I saw that he was going to commit early, reclass and go early. A lot of times these days you see guys going the other way. They reclass and go down, but he wanted to get a part of this class, and I didn't know why. And I reached out to a couple different people, and nobody really had a solid answer as to why exactly he did it. And it could be for many different reasons. I asked somebody today if they thought maybe Kirby needed extra room in the 23 class, and they said they didn't think that was it. So I'm not exactly sure why he did it, but you'll read a quote that brought directly from the young man himself, which makes a lot of sense. And after you read that, I kind of give my thoughts on that. But he's joining a great group, absolutely a great group. I don't know exactly how well he doesn't fit in. Obviously, with the class of 2023 guy, we really haven't had a chance to kind of dig into a lot of those guys yet. So for me, he's kind of an unknown. I know there's plenty of people who know plenty about him. I'm not one of them because I hadn't really looked at him yet. But obviously, he saw something that he wanted to be a part of, and he jumped at it.
And that quote Dan just mentioned, you can go find at SI Dogs Daily, dogsdaily.com if you want to go find it. Brooks Austin got this quote today and posted it over on an article on there discussing why Washington Jr. made the decision. He said, and I quote, "I saw it as an opportunity to elevate my level of development as an athlete because I will have an opportunity to get an early start being coached by the best coaches in college football and being groomed by the premier college football program that Coach Smart has built in Athens. UGA was already a top program, and Kirby just elevated it to that next level, and I'm excited to have an opportunity to be a part of that."
Absolutely, and I was kind of having a tweeting back and forth with some guys on Twitter today, and obviously I don't know the kid, and I have never had a chance to talk to him, but the way the way I view this is, he looked at it as I can go compete and develop. And I don't know, but I don't think he has any inclinations that he's going to play right away or anything like that. I don't think that's part of it at all. I think he just wants to go have this year to develop, learn, so that whenever next year comes around, he can hit the floor running, and he'll already have a leg up on a lot of those other guys coming in because he's already had a year inside the program. I understand where people are saying that he's wasting a year. But he's not really wasting a year, because how often these days do we see somebody redshirt? And especially if you're talking about a guy who's got the potential to go to the NFL. Okay. So imagine that he takes the red shirt, and if he's being genuine, he's going to consider that as his senior year in high school. So he's not worried about that. And then he'll have 3 to 4 years to play and get to the next level. I don't know the level of competition that he plays. I don't think it's as good as some of the others out there that are available. So maybe he views this as, I've really gotten as good as I could possibly get here in high school. I'm not going to play the level of competition that's going to make me a better player. I'm not going to get the level of coaching here. No disrespect to his coaches, but he's not going to get that level at that school with the nutrition, the weight program, all the recovery that you can get. Everything is better at Georgia than it is at a high school, and it should be, and it better be. If it's not, then Georgia's going to fall into the dark ages immediately because college program is supposed to be better than a high school program. But I think he just views this as an opportunity to develop it at a much higher level with much more quality competition than he would have in high school. So in that regard, I think it's probably a very mature response out of this young man. Not to mention, this kid put himself in an opportunity to graduate from high school a year early. Do you understand how many classes this kid probably took during summer or got college credits for? Because that's incredible to be able to graduate an entire year early.
Takes a lot of maturity, like you've already said. I mean, and a lot of discipline to make sure you do all your work and get it all done on time. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, that's a full load. Usually, what I think in some cases it's about 4 to 6 classes, depending on what high school you go to. This kid's probably taking double that. Has taken double that in the last 3 years alone. So I mean, absolutely insane what he did. And kind of bouncing off of what Dan's already said. George, he may have already maxed out at the high school level. There may not be that he may have already reached that ceiling where he feels like he can go off the college level and kind of reset his ceiling and get up to where to that NFL level in 3 to 4 years, depending on how long he stays at Georgia. But when you look at Georgia's class, I mean, you already have 3 DBs that have signed. Jaheim Singletary, Julian Humphrey, Dalen Everett. All 3 of those guys are as high rated as they come in 2022, and that's a credit to Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Jamel Adai. Obviously, Jamel Adai left the program this offseason to go join Miami to be that defensive backs coach. But Georgia brought in Fran Brown from Rutgers, and I mean he really hasn't. Georgia hasn't really skipped a beat in recruiting. You get Marcus Washington Jr., you get Justin Rhett from Notre Dame, a former Notre Dame commit just a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, you're already building onto what looks to be an already strong defensive back room. I mean, Dan, it wasn't long ago, this time last year, everyone was saying defensive back was probably a weakness of Georgia's in that defense. And now you look at it now, you bring back Keely Ringo, Christopher Smith, Dan Jackson, who I know you are a fan of and like to watch last year, and I'm sure he's going to get even more snaps this year playing alongside Christopher Smith. I mean, Georgia's defensive back room is looking pretty damn good. The only question marks you have to answer is how do you replace, the outgoings of Lewis Seen and De'Aaron Kendrick, and as we've talked about in the past, there's no one that's creating more buzz at cornerback than Kamari Lassiter. I think he's a kid that everyone's caught on to within the last 6 months. Played a lot of snaps in garbage time last year. I think he had a pick against Vanderbilt last year, if I remember seeing that. So, the future's bright. Georgia, there's a bunch of talent. Now you're just going to harness that talent and get some experience. I'm really excited to see Marcus Washington Jr. see what he does. Obviously, I don't think we'll see much of him this year because you already look at the DBs. I mean, Nyland Green sitting on the roster. I don't remember seeing much Nyland Green last year. We didn't get to see him in the spring game last year because I think he was one of the scratches due to COVID or injury. We didn't get to see him. I mean, Nyland Green's another 4 or 5 star guy coming out of high school that was as highly touted as any of them. So, Georgia's absolutely loaded. You bring back William Poole. I don't know where exactly Marcus Washington fits in. As Dan says, we haven't really had time to dig into this guy and see what he's all about. But physically, he's 6 foot, 170 pounds. You look at the 3 other defensive backs that are joining him in Athens this summer, Jaheim Singletary, Humphrey, and Everett. They're all around 6 foot, 190 pounds. I think the biggest one in this class is Everett or Humphrey, who I think it's around. I think they're 6'1", 6'2". So I mean, these are pretty long and lean guys. And Brooks said it well in his article. They want height, length, and speed. Lots of speed.
And he's going to have a great opportunity because there's no pressure on him. A lot of these guys that are coming into this class, there's a lot of pressure to adapt and contribute right away. I don't know that there's necessarily that amount of pressure on him. I think everybody who agreed to this inside the building is saying, hey, listen, this is your development year. You're going to be on the scout team. You're going to be doing a lot of that stuff. Some of the dirty work that a lot of these Showtime guys don't want to do. So I think it's just a great learning experience for him. And if he handles it that way, and the maturity that comes across and everything that he says and all the actions that he's actually done by, getting everything done ahead of time, I think it shows maturity, and I think it's there. And I think if he handles this the right way, it could be extremely beneficial for him long term. And I wonder if this is kind of one of those case studies, right? Where he's not the first player to ever do it, but if it goes well for him, do you start to see more of this in the future where guys are going to start going in early and taking a redshirt year? Because a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was a long time ago. It was almost expected that your first year at college, you would redshirt. I mean, the only guys who didn't redshirt were superstar talented type players like Maurice Clarett. I know you're way too young for this, but when Maurice Clarett was the starting running back at Ohio State as a freshman, he was the first freshman running back in the history of the school to get a carry in a football game.
Dang.
Think about that. And, he was a superstar and he blew up on the stage, and everybody across the nation was just completely enthralled with what he was able to do because it was so out of the realm of normal that a kid was playing and being that successful early. So, but now you see it all the time. You got quarterbacks all over the place starting as freshmen, and running backs getting carries as freshmen, receivers as freshmen. I mean, it's not even a big deal. The one place that you don't really see it that much is on the line of scrimmage, offense and defense. There's exceptions to every rule. Andrew Thomas came in here, did a fantastic job, all SEC type caliber guy his first year. Evan Neal down at Alabama started. I can't remember the massive tackle that they had that started day one left tackle. Was it Andre Smith maybe? I'm not sure. Tennessee had a couple guys. So, to your point, JT Daniels, he did leave high school early and started at USC, but I believe he was I believe he was
he's a
old.
little bit older.
Yeah,
Right?
I think he was older than the class. Kind of like, I think he's in a similar situation to where my son is, where he's one of the older in his class because he has a summer birthday, and we started him late, so to speak, for maturity reasons. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how this plays out. I really do think that if he plays his cards right and he handles this professionally in the right way, this could be really beneficial for him. But I didn't see it coming. Everybody that I've talked to today, nobody saw it coming. So kudos to him for having the guts to do it, because that's a huge step.
Absolutely. And something I was thinking about last night when it initially broke, it kind of caught me by surprise. We spent, I think it was a few weeks ago, one of our first shows together, we talked about, how we don't expect, or at least from outside perspective, we didn't expect Georgia to get into the transfer portal much because, hey, there were rumors going around that, Georgia had to trim its roster, trim some fat, so to speak, even though I don't think there's much fat in that roster because, I mean, I just don't. But, Georgia had rumors were going around that Georgia had 5 or 6 guys that they had to let go to get under 85 or to get to that 85 scholarship limit mark. And Kirby Smart goes out here a few weeks later and says, well, screw that. I'm going to go bring in a class of 2023 guy into my roster right now. And start developing them. So, that narrative's out the window. So, that brings the question of, I think we've had 3 or 4 guys enter the portal after spring. Is there some that are, have entered the portal that we just don't know about, that haven't announced it? Or is Georgia done trimming their roster? Are they back on that scholarship limit? That's going to be something to watch because, Dan, I mean, to me, there are some question marks on this roster that I feel you can answer through the portal. Linebacker for experience. I don't know if you bring in a linebacker that doesn't start. I don't know if you would waste a scholarship on that. Receiver, people think receiver needs something. You could go offensive line if you really wanted to get some experience up front. But, I mean, how does this affect that?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think you're going to see a lot of guys get ushered out. And I don't remember. Oh, Chuck Oliver the other day on 680 The Fan was talking about the NCAA's passing a new rule where you're signing classes for the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe you saw it, but the next 2 or 3 years, the recruiting classes will not be capped. So you could sign as many as you can sign up to your 85 scholarship limits. Well, a lot of these teams are already over, and Nick Saban kind of got some talk about handful of years back ago where they did the gray shirts or whatever, where they basically told a guy you're done playing football, and they stayed on scholarship at school, but the scholarship didn't count. However they work it, where they pay for the rest of your schooling, so you don't have to pay for anything, but that scholarship doesn't count anymore. They can give it to somebody else. Well, Chuck Oliver pointed out that the last 3 or 4 years, the University of Georgia has done that more than anybody in the United States of America, where we have ushered people out, shown them the door, told them they're done playing football. Kirby has built his roster the way that he wants it, and it's you're in or you're out. Like, you're either playing or you're getting out. He's not going to carry the dead weight. And we saw Owen Condon, get his national championship ring, and now he's going to SMU, I think, to play the rest of his college football. We saw Landers leave. We see all these guys are leaving, and everybody wants to jump on these kids when they go in the portal, but there is proof that Georgia's the one that are telling these kids to leave. Like, hey, it's time for you to go. You ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. That kind of thing. And I think there's going to be more. And I wouldn't be surprised to see guys just not playing football anymore. Like Clay Webb, I don't even know if he's still on the roster, but I would be surprised if he stayed on the roster. I mean, and I'm not picking on the kid, but there's just guys who are not getting the playing time, and they're going to get shown the door, and they're going to have to do it to open up these numbers. So I don't think we have seen the last of any of this.
And you caught me by surprise. I did not know that was happening, because I mean, I've had there were some conversations with the fan base, not as long as a few months ago, talking about why is Kirby not as aggressive with some of these roster movements of processing some guys, as it's called, inside the industry. I didn't know that was happening. I mean, that's amazing, because to me, I consider myself covering the program, kind of on a day-to-day basis. That thing was just swept under the rug. And, as we've said multiple times on the show, we're both subscribers to Bruce Austin's Patreon, where he gives us, the most up-to-date information out there, just as up-to-date as anyone else in the industry right now in the Georgia space. I didn't know that was happening. So that's an amazing tidbit. I mean, but to think they swept it under the rug, I mean, that shows how tight of a ship they're running over there.
But the kids who are being processed, you kind of forget about.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not processing Nakobe Dean, right? I mean, they're processing guys who were recruits, or, maybe, I mean, when you look at a recruiting class, just as an exercise, go back, if you have 247 or whatever in the class compilers or whatever, go back and look at like the last 3 or 4 Georgia classes. Once you start getting down those names, you're gonna be like, who? I don't know that. Who's did that kid play? Watch, you'll do it. Just go back 2 or 3 classes and just look at some of the names on there, and you won't recognize the names. Go look at the roster. All of a sudden, they're not on there. Where did they go? Those are the kids that are being processed.
I mean, it was kind of like, I thought it was going to be a similar situation. I mean, I don't know if you forgot about him. I forgot about him until he showed up in the Tennessee game. William Poole. I didn't even know William Poole was on the roster last year. I didn't know that dude was playing football. I thought he left. I mean, because he was just one of those guys that kind of disappeared after a few years. I didn't know. And now he's being talked about as a key contributor for Georgia, at that star position. He even got reps, apparently. Everyone was reporting that he was getting reps at outside corner, played in the G-Day game as an outside corner, showing some versatility there if Georgia needs it. I mean, talking about DB for a minute, Dan, we're going to get off on a little tangent here, going down a little pathway. Talking about star, this is talking about William Poole brought it up. You have William Poole that broke out after, I think it was the Tennessee game, started getting starting to get some reps at the star, started in the SEC championship game, which I think was a decision at the time many criticized because he didn't have the best of games in that SEC championship game, and many wanted to go back to Brini. Then he showed out in the playoffs and did what he did. And now you come back, Latavius Brini enters the transfer portal, and William Poole is, I think penciled in as the starter. But now you have Tyke Smith coming back from injury. A guy that was a former All-American at West Virginia is coming back off an ACL injury, expected to play this fall. Offers some versatility with playing at safety and being able to play star, what Georgia, I think, recruited him to do. Where does he fit in all this? Talk about a stacked DB room. He's a kid that I don't think many are talking about from outside media's perspective. I was reading an article ESPN wrote out the other day. Adam Rittenberg said Georgia, he had a power ranking for the future of all these, college football defenses, the future of these defenses. Georgia was ranked 2, right behind Clemson. And if I remember correctly, Tyke Smith wasn't mentioned in that article when talking about the secondary. I may be wrong, but off the top of my head, I don't remember seeing him mentioned.
Well, he is forgotten about because it's out of sight, out of mind, right? He hasn't been healthy. He hasn't been playing. He wasn't ever a part of this roster ever before, so nobody's ever seen him play in a game. So, out of sight, out of mind. And sometimes that can be dangerous because you can be forgotten about and you just get shuffled along and you never get seen. Or it can be a weapon where you have this super talented guy that nobody's had a chance to see, kind of out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, where everybody else forgets about him. The kid comes in and makes an immediate impact. And then the national sports media gets to go, oh my God, Georgia found a diamond in the rough with this kid. It's like, no, they didn't. Come on. Like, they knew how special he was. He was just injured. So I will be extremely interested to see how that plays out. You asked about the transfer portal, about maybe going to get a corner or something like that. I could see them possibly trying to do that, but they do have a lot of guys that are very talented, just young. And that's the only thing about that secondary. And if you remember last year, and we talked about it before, where we were very concerned about how that secondary would hold up, and I think they did just fine. So with the level of coaching that we have and all those talented players, I think they're all going to find their homes nicely, settle in, and I believe that we're going to have a very, very successful secondary to go along with just a very successful team. So with that, let's go ahead and transition. We're going to transition into what is Dan angry about now. We kind of touched on this a little bit in the crazy AAU parent segment, but we're going to talk about the treatment of officials. And this isn't just baseball, it's basketball, soccer, everything. All inclusive is this category. What I'm angry about is these people go to the game for kids. And I'm not talking about professional baseball. Y'all, you are more than welcome to blast those guys all day long. They don't care, to be completely honest with you. More times than not, they can't even hear you. But even if they could, they wouldn't care anyway. But when you go to a youth game, a youth sporting game, and I'll include high school in that to some degree, because to be completely honest, to be a high school official, just pay your dues and go to the classes, and you're a high school official. They're going to put you on the court or on the field. They just are. So right now we have a record low number of officials. That's across all sports, all states, all areas. We are actually having to cancel games because we don't have enough officials to cover the scheduled games. And this is a byproduct of people being out of their minds and not knowing how to act right, and just losing it on officials. First of all, most of these officials are young or old. That middle ground, that sweet spot, there's not a lot of those guys to begin with. So it's either really young or really old. And they are out there having to work more games than their bodies are physically capable of doing it. And they're doing that so that your kid can play. What in the world could possibly be so bad outside of that official assaulting your child that you would want to put hands on an official? But yet every single day when you turn on the news, turn on Twitter, turn on anywhere, there's a new article about an official getting assaulted. There was a woman who was doing a softball game and a dad beat the ever-living crap out of her in the parking lot. What in the hell is going on in this world? First of all, it's a kid's game. These are youth games. Most of these officials are really good people who are trying to do the very best that they can. You have to understand, more times than not, they're put in a bad situation because of you, because you can't act right and people don't want to work. I worked in professional baseball. I came back and worked 2 years of high school baseball when I got back. I worked high school baseball before I left and worked after I got back. I have no interest in doing any sports anymore because of the way that people act. It's insane. I was working a high school game, and my partner was a 4-time NCAA World Series umpire. Now, if you don't know how special that is, to be a professional umpire, you have to be selected, work through. That's fine. But the NCAA is a good old boy network, and you have to put in some massive time and kiss all the right butts to be able to work high level baseball in the NCAA. It is, I would say, it's almost more difficult to be able to be selected to do a World Series game than it is to make it to the major leagues in baseball. And I know that sounds absurd, and it kind of is absurd, but it really is true. One of my good friends, Andy Dudanis, was a 6-year AAA umpire, did Arizona Fall League, got called up, and he works regular season NCAA baseball now and can't even get into the postseason. It's absurd. But going back to my point, I'm working a high school baseball game with a guy who's done 4 College World Series, and you got people out there yelling, "You guys are terrible." It's like, are you kidding me right now? I mean, if you want to be honest and turn around and be like, no, we're not terrible. Your kid's terrible. He can't throw a damn strike to save his life. My job would be a lot easier if he could throw it between the 21 inches of the plate. But he can't. It's not my fault. The kid is over there at shortstops playing soccer with a baseball. That's not my job. That's not my fault. It's not my fault that the kid in center field is running in and the ball is going out. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, you weren't in position for that play. You're right, because the play was at second, but your dumbass kid at third base threw it to first. So I'm anticipating the play being at second. Now I'm spinning like a top trying to get a play over here at first. The ball should have never been over there in the first place. I don't know. Teach your kids how to play freaking baseball. How about that? I don't know. So it's absurd, and it just angers me to no end that you have quality officials leaving the game, whether it be basketball or baseball or whatever else the case may be, because they don't want to deal with the nonsense of the parents. First of all, you don't even know half the rules. So you're out here telling me some bullshit that's not even a real rule. It's like, he got out of the way. Like, no, if you're a batter in the batter's box and there's a throw to third, if you're going to make a throw to third, the batter has to stand in the box and the catcher has to work around him. If the batter backs out of the box, he's out of the box, and you hit him with the baseball, the runner is out. That's the rule. So, you don't even know the damn rules, but you're going to yell at me about it. You're 2-3 feet away from a bang bang play at the plate, but yet some guy up there in the stands has got a much better view than you. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. The game is more complex than that. So, and to my other point, these guys are working more games. So the guys who are sticking around and trying to do this for the kids, instead of maybe doing 2 or 3 baseball games in a day, they're having to do 5. So you go to these basketball tournaments where they start at 9:00 in the morning or 8:00 in the morning, some of them. So you got a set of officials on court 5 at 8:00 in the morning. Go back at 9:00 at night. Guess who's still there? The same 2 guys. They've done 10, 12 games in a day. Now, do you think for 1 second that these guys are going to be as efficient doing 9 games as if they were to do 2 games? No, it's not even humanly possible. You're lazy. You're not even getting up the court. The dude has been running for 12 hours. He's probably exhausted, but he's doing it so the kids can play. And that's the situation that we've created for ourselves by not being able to act right, is that you have these guys having to do it. And then the last part of it is everything costs more to do now, like to play anything, because of the officials' costs. So as to where when I first started doing baseball games, it was like $35 for a minor game, like $45 for a major game, and like $55 for a senior game, pony, something, whatever. And now those guys are making like $100 a game. High school baseball used to be $75 for a single, $120 for a double. Now it's more than that. and it's going up because you have to incentivize these guys to come out, and it's just unbelievable to me how people act at the game. Just go to the game and just listen to the way people talk to the officials. It's like, could you imagine if I came to your job? You know, I know you're a student, but like, well, imagine if I came to your school and sat over your shoulder and be like, that is the worst S I've ever seen. I mean, I can't even tell if it's a snake or an S. And then you don't even dot your I's right. I mean, it's not even above it. It's to the left of it. What are you doing? I mean, come on. It's absurd.
And as Colonel Sanders says in the comments, kind of contributing in all seriousness, I went to a high school lacrosse game, and the yelling at officials from parents was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, even at the professional games, I think professionally, it's not as paid attention to, because at the end of the day, you know, those guys are professionals as well, even in the college game. But you know, at high school and in amateur league, it does get out there a little out of hand. I have, as a former official, you know, reference some youth sports. I've had some things said to me that, you know, you wouldn't really expect of youth parents. But I guess at the end of the day, all those parents expect their 9-year-olds to be getting D1 scholarships at those games. So,
well, I can tell you, so in minor league baseball, one of the days that you dread are like penny pitcher days, where you know, they have like penny pitchers of beer, and these guys just get hammered. So I had a game in Amarillo, Texas, and I was behind the plate, got a foul ball straight back, and hit me right in the throat, and I went down. And both trainers came out, the doctor came out. Everybody was really worried because it hit me directly in the throat, and I was down. I ended up being fine. I mean, it hurt like all get out, but I ended up being fine. There's this drunk dude right behind the plate, and I could hear him because, I mean, the stadium was dead silent because, I mean, it was kind of serious. And he's like, "You been horse shit all game. I hope you die." And I mean, I'm like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, you really hope I die? It's like, all right, come on.
that's I can't believe that, guys. This is one of my favorite segments all week. I mean, it is the favorite segment because I never know what Dan's gonna come up with, what he's angry about now. Next week, I did plant the seed for next week, talking about a little controversy, talking about how, you know, some NBA stars get calls when others don't. So I'm interested to see if he comes back and shoots on that one. We've also teased earlier a few weeks ago about robo umpires, debate on whether or not the MLB should institute robo umpires. So that's, I mean, we got a lot of things we can do with Dan's umpiring experience and referee experience. We can go a lot of lanes, but guys, it's time. We got 2 more segments, and we're already 30 minutes into the show. So, you know, I mean, we're right on schedule with where we want to be. And that brings us to our next segment. We're going to introduce a little new segment, something that we're going to keep up with, you know, every once in a while. The college football stock market is in session, Dan. I'm opening our stock market, and it's time to do a little buying and a little selling. So we're going to go over 3 programs each about, you know, I think both of us have 2 programs we're going to buy stock of, 1 program we're going to sell. And it may change depending on, you know, what happens, or, you know, as the season gets closer, and even through the season we may go over it. But I'm started off. I'm going to give one I'm buying real quick, and I'm starting with Oklahoma in the Big 12, because, I mean, yes, you just lost Lincoln Riley, but you're bringing Brett Venables. There is no one more experienced as a defensive coordinator, as a whole, than Brent Venables. I trust the dude. I mean, if we didn't have Kirby Smart, would I be happy with a Brett Venables hire? Maybe not as much as Oklahoma fans would be, but I know he's going to do. I mean, I think he's going to do a good job. I don't know if he's going to get, you know, Oklahoma national championship, you know, within the next 2 or 3 years. I wouldn't expect it if I was an Oklahoma fan. But look at the job he's already done in the first few months he's been there. You know, a bunch of people go to the portal because obviously they want to follow their head coach Lincoln Riley to USC and go join that hype train. But look who he brings in. Brings in Dylan Gabriel, formerly of UCF, University of Central Florida, to replace Caleb Williams, someone who, by all means, probably looks like a Heisman frontrunner right now because, I mean, you know, whenever you have a quarterback playing the Lincoln Riley offense, well, that's just what you're going to be in the preseason until you prove them otherwise. You're going to be a Heisman favorite because we know Lincoln Riley loves to throw the ball. So, I mean, and then you pair Dylan Gabriel with his former offensive coordinator, Jeff Levy, who spent 2 seasons, the last 2 seasons at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. And Dan, I didn't know how good Dylan Gabriel, like, I didn't know what he was as a quarterback until, I kind of looked at his stats, and I know it's bad to box score scout, but you look at his stats, it's kind of insane. And I know why. He's thrown for over 8,000 yards, 70 touchdowns, and had 14 interceptions in over 2 seasons as a quarterback at the collegiate level. That's insane. And when you look at the coordinator for, I think he was there with Levy for 2 years at Central Florida. I mean, that's an exciting offense in itself. It's similar to what Lincoln Riley is going to run at USC. It's similar to what he ran at Oklahoma. And then you go back and you watch Lane Kiffin's offense or Jeff Levy's offense at Ole Miss these last 2 years. It's nothing but RPOs. I mean, that is what that system's built off of. It is based off of RPOs and taking shots downfield every once in a while and some really exciting quarterback play. I'm buying stock in Oklahoma just because, I mean, you're going from one offensive mind to another, from Lincoln Riley to Jeff Levy. I don't think there's much schematic change there. Maybe there's a little different language. Maybe there's some different passing concepts, but you're getting, I think it's going to be a pretty good quarterback, and you keep 2 of your best receivers in Marvin Mims and Theo Weiss. I'm buying stock. Yes, the defense is a question, but who better to fix your defense than Brett Venables?
I don't disagree with that. I don't think Oklahoma's to me is one of those programs where you would really have to mess it up to mess it up, if you know what I mean. I mean, you would have to be a really bad coach to mess up what they have going on in Oklahoma. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of reasons to be successful. Lincoln Riley was kind of gifted that program that Bob Stoops did a great job of building up. So I would there's no reason why you wouldn't buy that stock. How about that?
Absolutely. And I'm curious to see, I mean, what team you buying, Dan? What program you buying?
So I'm going to go with my West Coast crush, and that's USC, even though we hate them right now because of all the bull crap they've done. Okay, so let me go ahead and say disclaimer. This is all based on the fact that they don't get the death penalty or, get everybody thrown out of school for all the shit they pulled. So that aside, if everything is able to continue into the season, I'm buying USC. And the reason I'm buying USC is for a lot of the reasons you mentioned with Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley coming over and he brings his quarterback with him. They have a lot of talent coming in. Yes, they're going to have young talent. They weren't a good football team last year, but I've said it a million times and I'll say it again, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, that USC is a sleeping giant. Unless they get in trouble, that team is going to be easy to get going in the right direction. And you say, well, Dan, that's not true because look at all the people who have failed at it. You're right. But when did they have it humming? They had it humming when they had Pete Carroll, who was youngish at the time, charismatic. He embraced the Hollywood lifestyle. He made it the place to be. He made it showtime, like the Lakers. Like USC was it. And they were the only show in town, pretty much. There was no NFL team there when he was there. Now there are 2 NFL teams there, but it doesn't matter. When USC has it going right, everybody wants to be at those games. And I think Lincoln Riley going to USC is kind of a perfect storm. Again, based on everything that he's done in the past, the way that he's able to recruit. He did a great job at Oklahoma. I don't know if you've ever been to Norman, Oklahoma. It's a cow pasture. This guy just convinced the best players in the world to come to a cow pasture. Now you're telling me I'm going to come out to La La Land and the beach? My guy has just got a much easier job. So that's why I'm buying USC. I think he can get it. And Caleb Williams is legit. And he doesn't have to learn anything new because he's with his coach. So I'm not saying they're going to win the national title. I'm just saying I am buying stock in that program right now because stock is low. And I think it's going to be at the level of Pete Carroll's USC. And that's a scary proposition for the rest of the college football.
Absolutely. And, I really like how you compared, the analogy of USC, kind of being like the Showtime Lakers. I mean, and you look at Lincoln Riley, I think he has more charisma, probably shows a little bit more passion than Pete Carroll did at the time. I think I like what Lincoln Riley is going to bring to there. He's going to bring a certain flash back to that program. He's going to have the offense humming within a few years. They got some things to sort out up front on the offensive line. Then you also got the questions defensively. I mean, that's been the big thing with him at Oklahoma is, when is he ever going to get to defense, so he can win a national championship? Because if Oklahoma had a an average to above average defense, they probably win a national championship at some point during Lincoln Riley's reign. So it's going to be interesting to see how USC does this year. I mean, the Pac-12 is for the taking, in my opinion. So we'll see. I think we had some people talk about Oregon winning the Pac-12 this year. I don't have a prediction yet there yet. I think Utah's also probably a front runner there. But another program, last program I'm buying real quick. It's already been mentioned in the comments by Rudes. I'm buying Tennessee, and this is, I mean, kind of like USC. It's pretty mainstream at this point. Everyone's buying Tennessee. If college football had a stock market, Tennessee would be soaring. That thing would be going up like gas right now because, I mean, that program right now, it looks like it's on a trend up for the first time since when? I don't even remember. Since Phil Fulmer was there. I mean, that thing looks like it is about to take off. I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to go win the SECs. I'm not saying they're in contention for the SECs because by all means, Georgia's still in the division. So, you're going to have to recruit at a top 5, top 10 level for a few years before I see you taking over the East. But Josh Heupel overachieved in his first season. 7-6 in Knoxville with a roster that was depleted from a mass exodus to the transfer portal in the gloom of the exit of Jeremy Pruitt and that, Happy Meal scandal that took college football by storm, for much of the end of last season. Got them to 7 wins. Yes, they lost in their bowl game. I think it was the Belk Bowl. But, dude, you go back and look at Hendon Hooker. I mean, Hendon Hooker played pretty damn well against Georgia. Took the top off Georgia's defense a couple times. Had people sweating a little bit, in Athens for, I think, maybe a quarter or two before Georgia kind of put the straps on and ended that game. But, if he's anywhere else with the stats he had last year, he may be, someone who's being talked about as a Heisman frontrunner this year. He threw 31 touchdowns. 31 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. Had damn near 3,000 yards passing and had rushed for over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had 36 total touchdowns last year for the Vols offense that ranked top 10 in scoring. They also add former USC and Texas wide receiver Brew McCoy to the mix at receiver, going along with Cedric Tillman, the guy that burned Georgia a couple times with his speed over the top. Probably could have had a few more yards than he ended up doing. But, I mean, it's going to be an exciting offense and kind of a theme that we're having developed here with the teams we're buying stock in. The defense is a question still.
I think Tennessee is a good stock to buy. I think Heupel has done a good job. I was a little bit skeptical on Heupel because he was the guy at USC who took over for the guy at USC or UCF. I'm sorry. He wasn't the one that got USF or gosh, oh my gosh, UCF. Who was the coach before Heupel?
Frost.
Yeah. So in Scott Frost, right? And he has done a miserable job at Nebraska. That's neither here nor there. But Tennessee, I'm not too old not to remember, when Mark Richt took over at University of Georgia, Tennessee owned us. And they were kicking our rear ends year in and year out. And they did a great job of coming down here to Georgia, getting a lot of our talent. Now, Kirby has done an amazing job of tying up those loose ends and keeping who he wants for the most part. But Tennessee did a great job of recruiting. And for whatever reason, these young athletes love that Tennessee look. And I don't know why. I've never figured that one out. I never liked Tennessee, but I never hated Tennessee either. So Tennessee is one of those teams where Georgia's going to have a fight on their hands sooner rather than later. So again, I'm not trying to play like Jonathan Jeremiah always say that they want to argue, but they can't. But I can't argue with you on that pick because because you prefaced it by saying I'm not saying they're going to win the East, but I think they're going to be really good. And I really think they have the ability to be really good. I'm more of a wait and see kind of thing with him, but he did a great job in the first year just to get that train back on the tracks.
Absolutely. And which brings us to the second team you bought. Some stock.
All right. So this team is so obvious and it's like not a risk at all, but like they kind of get brushed to the side and I'm not really sure why, but Ohio State is always scary good. They're always scary good. Now, they haven't had the ultimate success in the recent years, but they're always there and they've always got talent. I've never understood how they can come down here into Georgia and South Florida and all those areas and get some of our top players. They do it every single year. And they recruit nationally just like Georgia and Alabama, and they get loaded classes. They have talent. They have a quarterback. They have a really good coach. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Ryan Day. Um, part of the reason that they don't get the hype train hasn't gone crazy is because I think some people have questions about Ryan Day, and I'm not saying like the guy should be fired. Questions like it's kind of like with Kirby up until this year. It's like we know he can recruit, we know he does a good job, but can he win the big games? And Ryan Day really hasn't done that yet. So I get that part of it, but Ohio State's always scary good, and they've got talent everywhere, all over the roster. Offensive line, defensive backs, wide receivers, running backs. They've got it everywhere. So you'd be silly not to buy the Ohio State stock. You just would, because they're going to be there. And I mean, who's going to beat them in the Big Ten? I mean, Michigan, really? They beat them this year. Woo. They finally got one. But I think it was like the first one in 20 years or something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. But so I know it's obvious and it's low-hanging fruit, but you have to buy Ohio State stock because they're going to be there.
You bring up an interesting point. He hasn't won the big, he hasn't really proven himself getting that big win, getting that big national championship win. Are you saying Ryan Day should be the new Kirby Smart of the mainstream media? Are we putting Ryan Day in that same category with Jimbo Fisher at A&M, where they're the next Kirby Smart? And I think the Jimbo slander is a little unfair because, yes, he did win a national championship while at Florida State. But is Ryan Day the new Kirby Smart, maybe? Can we push that, Dan?
Yeah, Jimbo won a national title at Florida State with somebody else's players and then ran the damn program into the ground. So, Jimbo's national championship has an asterisk on it because I'll just stop before I say something stupid. But Jimbo, Ryan, he ain't in Jimbo's class. Ryan Day, I think he's the next one on the list. Ryan Day is the next one on the list where he checks a lot of boxes, but he has a couple boxes left unchecked, and can he get them checked?
And which takes us to the selling column. Dan, I start off with the buying. I'm going to let you start off the selling real quick. Dan, which program are you selling?
All right, this one will be fun for everybody. And nobody's buying this stock. Everybody's selling this stock. Hell, the athletic director himself is selling the stock, except he can't afford to buy out his coach. And it's Georgia Tech on the flats. And they're terrible. That roster is atrocious. The coaching staff is a gimmick. It's the Mickey Mouse parade. Every single, it's like, we're going to lift weights on the sidelines before a game because we're going to intimidate you in our shorts. And look at me, I can power clean 135 with rubber weights. And it's a freaking clown show over there. They've made no progressions. It's nothing but regressions. He's Dan Quinn 2.0 with nothing but gimmicks and all these little catchphrases. If he would go out there and actually coach instead of trying to come up with catchphrases to use for his kids, maybe they'd start winning some football games. But they're an embarrassment, and their friggin' AD goes out and says, "Well, I can't fire him. I can't afford the buyout." So he's just going to coach here, and Jeff Collins has to show improvement this year, but he doesn't specify. Like, hey, Jeff Collins has to go to a bowl game this year. Or, hey, Jeff Collins has to compete in the ACC this year. Or, hey, Jeff Collins needs to win 10 games this year. He has to show improvement. Hey, guess what? Our punter is now the best punter in the ACC, so that's an improvement. We're going to keep him. When the real reason is you can't afford a buyout because nobody watches your football games. The end.
It's a tough situation. Robert says they got to transfer QB, but you also lost Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, and now Jahmyr Gibbs is on the stratosphere of being like one of the best running backs in college football. You have Bijan Robinson, and then there's Jahmyr Gibbs. I think they're hand in hand. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get an offensive line this year. For the first time, I think, ever in his collegiate career, he's going to get an offensive line.
Jahmyr Gibbs should have never gone to Georgia Tech in the first place. I want to know what kind of bag he got, because you can't convince me that he may have had a severe concussion from high school to make that decision. And you talk about doing bold predictions. I got one for you that's not Georgia related. Jahmyr Gibbs might be the best running back in college football this season. And he wasted 3 years at that Mickey Mouse program.
And looking at, speaking of Georgia Tech real quick before we transition, I mean, you look at their schedule. They open with Clemson week 1. Then you go to Western Carolina. Okay, that should be a gimme. Play Ole Miss. Play
Is it,
UCF. Maybe not. I thought they were going to lose to Kennesaw State last year. I will say that. So maybe not. Ole Miss, UCF, Pittsburgh, Duke. I think that probably should be a win. Virginia, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, UNC, and then end with Georgia. My God, Georgia Tech makes the ACC look like they're playing the SEC a little bit, because none of those conference games, except for maybe 1 or 2, are gimmies.
They're just a really bad program right now. Just a really, really bad program. And, it's better for everybody when they're good. And I think the reason I'm angry about it kind of is because they're so bad. It's like they're on our schedule and they're so bad. And I don't even know what else to say. They're just so bad.
The one thing I've always, it was a pipe dream. Speaking of gimmicks, I think this would be awesome. Like a home run hire for Georgia Tech if they ever wanted to make it, if they want to move on from Jeff Collins. Go throw a bag at Mike Leach. Talk about a guy with gimmicks. Talk about a guy that, maybe could kind of draw some attraction to, the stereotype around Georgia Tech being, all brains at that school, being obviously a really, prestigious, one of the most prestigious institutions in the country right now. If you want to go get education, you go to Georgia Tech. Sorry, Georgia fans, but that's just the way it is. Georgia Tech and their engineering school. Go get Mike Leach. Go have a fun offense. If you're gonna lose, make it fun to watch. Kind of like Ole Miss. Ole Miss is gonna lose to Alabama, but is that not a fun, entertaining product to watch offensively?
They went after Mike Leach. He said no.
Did they really?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the talk on 680 of the Fan before they hired Jeff Collins, is that they were going after Mike Leach, and everybody was talking about, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to be at every press conference, regardless of what happens. And I was like, if Mike Leach comes to Georgia Tech, hell, I'm watching their games.
Oh,
so, but I have
look what he did to Texas Tech.
Can I give you a bonus buy?
Go ahead.
Before you do your sell? And I'll do real quick. My bonus buy is Ole Miss, just because of Lane Kiffin. I can't get it. Sorry, I had to throw this in there when you brought up Mike Leach. I love Lane Kiffin. I love everything Lane Kiffin does. I know everybody hates him, and that's fine. Whatever. The guy keeps failing forward. He'll screw up, and get better jobs. But I think he got humbled when he was out there with Saban, and I really do think he's turned it around, and he's actually doing a pretty good job. But my bonus buy is Ole Miss. I enjoy Lane Kiffin, and I end up watching a lot of their games just because of Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, it's a fun product to watch. I'm gonna be hooked in. I don't care for the Egg Bowl, but shoot, you got an air raid Mike Leach offense, and you got an RPO heavy Lane Kiffin offense. Why would you not watch that? 2 of the funniest coaches in college football go head to head once a year. That's amazing.
With defense optional.
Yes. Defense doesn't even get off the bus. But to transition on, because we still got one more segment to get into, my selling team. And this may come across, this may be a little controversial. Some of y'all may agree with me. Some of you may disagree with me. I think, Dan, I don't know where you sit on this, but we're about to find out. Guys, I'm selling Clemson. I'm sorry. Yes, 10-3 is a down year. Heck, I know a lot of programs would take 10-3 as a down year. But offense looked horrible. I don't know if offense is in their vocabulary over there after what I watched last year. Ungole, for as hyped up as he was all offseason, for as, put a little bit of fear into some Georgia fans about, hey, look at the potential this kid has and what it could do to Georgia in week 1. When at the beginning of last offseason, everyone was talking about, hey, it's the offense's time to turn up and be, the driving force in this Georgia team. Well, heck, that didn't happen. It was the defense once again. Kind of came out of nowhere, surprised some people. You don't solve offensive line problems in 1 year. I mean, I don't think you can. I mean, Kirby Smart kind of did it with that 2016 to 17 class. That offensive line got a lot better, ended up being good enough to go get Georgia to the playoffs. I don't see that, getting fixed in 1 year unless they just have some major overhaul there. Quarterback, that's a major question. Receiver, what receivers do you have? Your best receiver last year was Justin Ross coming off of, a life-altering, I don't want to say injury, but it was a precondition he dealt with earlier in his life that sat him out a whole year. The best receiver in college football at one time. He had a transformative game against Alabama, broke out on the national stage, helped them to that 44-16 rout of Alabama in the national championship, and then kind of fell off the scene because, he had that injury pop back up, kept him out. Defense is going to be fine. But when you talk about staff changes, Dabo Swinney and his staff was the face of stability in college football for staff. If you want to look at, staff turnover, they were keeping 99.9% of his staff for a long time. Brett Venables was there forever. Now everything's changing. You don't have the same offensive coordinator that you once had in the national championship. When you were winning national championships, you don't have the same defense coordinator. Defense, I don't think much is a problem. But what's going to happen when those guys go? When Brian Brzezzi's gone, when Myles Murphy's gone, kind of like when Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence left. What are you going to do when the chips are down? How are you going to rebuild? I'm selling Clemson.
Well, listen, you can talk about the offensive coordinator leaving. You can talk about the defensive coordinator leaving. You can talk about Trevor Lawrence leaving. You can talk about Etienne leaving. But you're leaving out the key. The reason that they're not successful anymore is because Hunter Renfrow didn't get his 17th year of eligibility. So, I mean, Hunter Renfrow left, and they've just never been the same. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And that's going to bring us to our last segment of the show. Guys, let us know, what programs are you buying and you selling? Hit us up on Twitter. We will drop those ats at the end of the show. Hit us up in the comment section below, and we will get you our opinions on whether or not we'd buy that stock. But, Dan, it's time for the title segment, as we call it, the main event. Is Georgia set for another undefeated season? And this whole segment was prompted by a story about, I think it took place about 2 weeks ago, 11 days to be exact, so about 2 weeks. Kentucky tight ends coach Vince Marrow came out and basically said that he believes 2022 could be the year that the Wildcats upset the Dogs. And here's this exact quote, Dan. There's 2 quotes and they're broken up. He says, the first quote comes, and I quote, "I think it's going to come down to that game, that Georgia game," is what he's talking about. November 19th. Going to be cold. Kroger Field will be rocking. It'll be a good time to play some football, end quote. Then he adds later on, "You're going to see a team that expects to win, that will win, and we're going to try to get to Atlanta. This may be the year we say this is the last door we need to kick in to get down there." I assume he's talking about Georgia. That was kind of a quote out of context in the radio interview he was doing. Dan, they got Will Levis, who we talked about a few weeks back, as someone that, some people have going in the first round as a first-round QB in the next draft. Are you buying that Kentucky? I mean, is Kentucky on upset alert when Georgia comes to town?
Well, the way you worded it, no, because Georgia's not going to upset Kentucky.
No, other way around. My bad.
No, listen. The old saying, any given Sunday, right? Or, any given Saturday, where if everything comes together right, any team can win and any team can lose. Even the best teams can be beaten. Can Georgia be beaten? Sure. Georgia can be beaten. We've seen them lose games that they shouldn't lose before. But the perfect storm for that Georgia would have to go into that game disinterested or really beat up and injured. One of the, we already know what Kentucky's going to try to do because they try to do it every single year that Georgia plays them. They slow it down, they play ball control, and they try to play keep away. And they just try to get Georgia to start feeling anxious and make a mistake, which is ironically what Kirby did a lot during that 2017 season with a really good defense. Chaney. Yeah, they played keep away. They grinded it out. They used the 2 absolute monsters they had in their backfield. But here's the thing. Is Kentucky's defense good enough? Okay, they're pretty good, but are they good enough? And do they have bell cow running backs that can get the job done the way that Chubb and Michelle did? I don't think they do. Will Levis, all this crap about him being like the best quarterback in college football is like, get off my lawn with that. Like, miss me with that. Like, where this guy hasn't done anything. I don't understand. I don't understand where it came from, and I don't know any of the players at Kentucky. So if you're telling me this team is going to upset Georgia, I'll listen to the conversation because any team can be beaten, and we've seen Kentucky do an outstanding job of controlling this Georgia football team in the past when they play up there. And the one that comes to mind is a couple years ago when it was raining. What did we win, like 13-7 or something like that? It was,
I think it was 21-7. The year after 2020, I know we won 14-7, which was what you're thinking of. And then the year before, when we had the James Coley offense, I don't think we broke 20 points.
Yeah, they've done a good job. They've got the blueprint of how to do it. I just don't know that they have the talent to get it done. So is it wrong to circle that game and say this is a real threat to Georgia? No, it's not wrong. Do I think it's realistic? I don't think it's realistic, but is it possible? Yeah, it's possible it could happen because we've watched it play out before our eyes with the South Carolina game a couple years ago where Georgia was disinterested and we got our teeth kicked in. I mean, I know that we didn't get routed or anything like that. We had a chance to win the football game, but we didn't. Like, they physically dominated us. Now, I don't foresee that being the case. But to take it to baseball, look at the Braves right now. They got that championship hangover where, a lot of those guys are kind of feeling good about themselves, and this season is off to a really rocky start. And they're not pitching well. They're not hitting at all. They're not playing defense. I mean, we got guys committing errors and never commit errors. So we haven't seen Georgia take the field and play a football game. They said all the right things and did all the right things during the spring. How do they attack the summer? How do they attack those grueling workouts that are going to take place then? How do they approach every single game? Do they start to get a big head like, hey, we've arrived? You don't know any of those things. So that variable is always going to be there, and Kentucky could get the win. I really don't see that happening.
And what's interesting about Kentucky is I don't think many people notice. I mean, they brought in an offensive coordinator that worked with Sean McVay and the Rams. I think it was last offseason. Well, that guy's gone. The guy that kind of overhauled their offense and incorporated a lot more RPO schemes into that offense and kind of made their offense a little bit more fun to watch, even though it wasn't much different. I mean, passing wise, they overhauled the concepts. It wasn't much different from what they ran in the past. I mean, Rondell Robinson was featured as halfback / receiver. I mean, he did everything for that offense. He's gone. He's the offensive coordinator for Sean McVay. So that tells you kind of, what kind of talent they had at offensive coordinator last year. He's now in the NFL working with Sean McVay. But I think, when you get down to it, Kentucky's not the word for me. Yes, UGA is going to Kentucky to play them. But, you look at Tennessee, Dan. I think me and you are both big advocates for Tennessee. Not saying that they're going to be SEC East contenders this year. Honestly, I don't know if they even come second in the SEC East. I think they're probably – they could. They'd have to be Kentucky. But, that offense against Georgia's defense, which, as David Pollock said that he thinks Georgia's going to be giving up around 10 more points than they did last year, which means they're probably going to be giving up around 21 points. Maybe a little outlandish, maybe a little too much. But, Tennessee's offense, which is returning a lot, versus Georgia's defense, which not returning that much. Yes, you're bringing back talent, but the rest, you don't have as much experience as you did last year. Tennessee's more of a worry. But when you look at Georgia's schedule, you're playing some of your toughest games at home. Auburn, Tennessee, Oregon, basically a home game. You're playing in Atlanta. How many Duck fans are going to travel to Atlanta? Probably a good bit, but that's going to be another 70-30 Georgia crowd. Then you look at the road games. The toughest road game is either Kentucky or Mississippi State. And, to me, God, I do not want to watch that Mississippi State game because I don't want to hear those damn cowbells for 4 quarters. I think we've talked about that in the past. I don't want to hear those cowbells. That's going to be a raucous crowd. Talk about another air raid offense. My God, that's going to be fun to watch. Those are the same. That's the same program that gave Georgia a run for its money in the debut of JT Daniels. JT Daniels had to throw for 400 yards in his debut. to beat Mississippi State 28-21. I mean, that's going to be a great game to get up for and watch. Maybe a primetime game. But Dan, I want to, before we wrap this up, because I mean, yeah, Georgia's schedule looks slightly easier than it did last year. And you had a quote from Kirby Smart. I think it was on the Feinbaum show. I'm not sure, but there was an article on it that Mike Griffith wrote over at Dog Nation, where Smart said that Georgia was not tested until the SEC championship game. That Alabama was the first true test that team faced, and said that some guys on the team, and I think we were aware of this because we've heard it in the media and the build up to the national championship, that some guys didn't feel they were in shape because obviously, you weren't playing 4 quarters, and they weren't all around ready to play when that game came around. And obviously, that may have contributed to why Georgia got a little shellacking there, got their teeth kicked in, as Dan said. Dan, is Georgia on pace to fall into the same trap where it's last year on repeat of sorts, where you blow through the regular season undefeated, then you get to Atlanta and you lose to Alabama?
Well, one of the most difficult things to do is to stay on top. The climbing of the hill is the easy part. It's almost everybody can make that climb up the mountain. It's getting to the very top and then staying at the top. Once you get to the top, you have a bullseye on your back and you get everybody's best shot. Now, I'm sure that's been something that Kirby's been preaching ever since he got there, is that we want to be the team that everybody gives their best shot to. And then, now that they've started to win at an extremely high level, he's probably like, hey, listen, we're going to get everybody's best shot. And that's good to hear, right? It's good to remind them. But it's also another thing to live through it and to take those best shots week in and week out, where these teams are going to scheme and put together things that they don't do against anybody else, and they're going to do them to you because you're the one that they want to. Everybody wants that. Like when you go hunting, everybody wants that buck, the giant buck, the one that you can put on your wall. Nobody wants the little spike, right? Nobody gives a crap about that. So Georgia's going to get everybody's best shot. And to your point, I mean, Georgia has gone to Mississippi State in the past and lost in a really ugly football game. Georgia can go on the road to Kentucky and lose. Auburn, even though they're not as good as they probably should be, Auburn is always one of those teams that always gets in. And there was a pattern for a while where the road team was winning almost every game in that series. So to say Auburn couldn't come to Athens and win, I mean, okay, you could say it if you want to, but it's happened plenty in the past. And, this team isn't that team. I got you, but it's a rivalry for a reason. And, Oregon, I don't expect to have trouble with Oregon, but then again, it's a team they haven't played, and it's the very beginning of the season, and they're going to they have nothing to lose. And a lot of the teams have nothing to lose. So Georgia's going to get everybody's best shot. To your point of, are they going to go completely untested through the season and potentially go get whooped in the SEC championship game again? I mean, I guess it could happen. Absolutely, it could happen. But I think a lot of those guys did get a wake up call, and there's enough. And you said we don't have a lot coming back. Well, I mean, you saw that stat that John Tweet Sports or whatever put out, where we have more returning snaps defensively than this year than we did last year. So there's guys, but there's a lot of guys that are going to be in the room that have lived through that, and hopefully that leadership is strong enough to where that doesn't happen. But Georgia really should go through the schedule undefeated and meet whoever in the SEC championship game. It would be hilarious if it was Texas A&M. That would be so hilarious.
Gosh, I mean, I don't expect to see Texas A&M in this championship for at least another 3 to 4 years, because obviously you got to give that recruiting class time to cook. But Dan, let's wrap it up. Anything you got to add before we wrap up today's show?
Nope. I think that's it. I think we've talked everything right into the ground, but I appreciate everybody who took the time to jump in the comments and watch our show live. Hopefully you guys are sharing this and enjoying it, and I'm not getting any feedback from you guys. So, if you want to see us add something or whatever, feel free to share. We're trying to incorporate some new stuff into the show, get some new ideas. So anything you got, we'll take. And I hope you guys enjoy it and look forward to it every single week.
Guys, I am putting the ticker on the bottom real quick. Make sure to follow us both on Twitter. I did change my @ on Twitter, Dan, because I wanted to change it. It is @Harrison Reno now. very quick and easy to find on Twitter. You can find Dan Kiley at Dan Kiley3. Guys, like Dan said, go interact with us on social media. We're here to hear feedback. We're here to hear criticism. We're here to hear praises. We're here for all of it. But guys, that's going to wrap it up. I'm Harrison Reno. That's Dan Kiley. We will see you back next Tuesday, same time, same place, unless otherwise told. Guys, that was episode 42 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. Shout out to the guys that are listening to this back the next day or even right after we get off air, guys. You guys rock. See you next week.